For the record, City Attorney Dixon, do we have anything to report out from closed session?
Mayor Pro Tem, no, we do not have anything to report out.
All right, we'll stand in recess for a moment before we start our 7 o'clock meeting. Good evening, everyone. I would like to call our regular city council meeting back to order at 7 p.m. We have a bit of a change in the playbill tonight. The role of mayor will be played by yours truly. Our Mary Lane Genoway is out of town on city business tonight. She wishes her well, and we wish her safe travels and much success in her endeavors. At this time, I'd like to ask John Pointer from American Legion Post 281 to come forward and lead our invocation. After that, we're going to have Boy Scout Troop 872 come forward to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. As we do this invocation, I want you all to be mindful, and we do so as a city, that we're doing this invocation tonight in memory of those who were injured today and lost their lives in Aliso Viejo. Our hearts are with them, our prayers are with them and their families, and I offer this invocation tonight. Please stand as you're able.
Thank you, Mayor. Holy Father, we ask you to look down on this meeting and help these elected officials to always seek the truth, make the right decisions that will be for the betterment of the city and its citizens, and ensure its continued greatness. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing. Boy Scout Troop 872, Color Guard, please advance. Please place your hand over your heart. Those in uniform, please salute. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to our nation's flag. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2. Audience, you may be seated.
And guys, if you'd stay there, we'll be down and say hello for a second. Wow, great job. Thank you so much. Anybody nervous at all? We got all our troop leaders up here. I want to make sure everybody comes up. So great. Thank you so much for being here. This is exciting. We get to do this every week, and we know it's it's kind of one of the highlights of our week. So we really appreciate you all doing that. If I could, I was going to ask to see if you'd tell us your name, tell us what grade you're in. I'll just pass down the microphone. Only need your first name.
My name is William. What grade? I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Mateo, and I'm in 6th grade.
My name is Blake. I'm in 7th grade.
My name is Jason, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Aragon, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Jason, and I'm in 5th grade, and today is my birthday.
My name's Donovan, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Jacob, and I'm in 8th grade.
Got a couple of scout leaders back here, too.
Name is James. I'm the organizational chair.
Clancy, Assistant Scoutmaster.
Brian, Assistant Scoutmaster.
Great. Let's give a big hand for them being here tonight. And if we have their paparazzi here tonight, if anybody wants to take a picture, come on down. We'll get in. Great, thank you very much. Who's in charge of dismissal?
Color guards, prepare to retreat.
Good job, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's great. Thank you very much. We have a couple of presentations tonight. I'm sure Mayor Genoway is disappointed she's not here for this, but we have our Word of the Month art contest winners from May 2018. You may recall from prior meetings that the Word of the Month was tribute, not in the Hunger Games way, but in some other way. And we had some outstanding art submissions that were out in the hallway tonight. I hope you got a chance to look at those, and I wanted to give out 3 of the prizes tonight. And do we have the prize flags? Ah, well done. Good. The category for primary, that's grades 1 through 5, with a piece called "The Best Case to Live" is Brooke Rifkin. Say, yeah, right. This is not the first time Brooke's won an award, too. She is quite the artist, so thank you very much, Brooke. Congratulations. Just a second. The next category is the adult. That's 18 to 55. A Tribute to Love, and that's by Diane Noss. So congratulations, Diane. Also not Diane's first time to win, so congratulations. Welcome back, and thank you. And in the classic category, which is 18 to 55 as well, this one's called Man in Baseball by Paula Wheeler. Thank you, Paula. Congratulations. Thank you as well. Okay. So can we get their paparazzi and get some city pictures as well? Absolutely. But first, we do a selfie.
None of us do selfies.
There you go. Great. Thank you very much. Thanks, you. Thank you all very much. Big round of applause. Thank you so much. I have this feeling we might see you next month. I have this this artist premonition. Our next presentation is a resolution commending Deputy John Popp on receiving the Mothers Against Drug Driving Deuce Award. And this time I was going to ask our Laguna Niguel Chief of Police, Matt McDaniel, and Deputy John Popp to come forward for the presentation. And Chief McDaniel was going to give us a few words.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. First off, this city experienced some tragedy of its own last year. We had 6 fatal collisions in this city last year. But I really want to thank and commend our city council, our city leadership, who saw an issue with drunk driving and brought 2 driving under the influence enforcement deputies to our city. So really, I thank you guys for your commitment to our public safety. And this deputy next to me wouldn't be here without that, that foresight. So this is Deputy John Popp. When he heard we were adding a driving under the influence deputy, he put in. He was currently assigned to the airport. He came here and made 52 drunk driving arrests last year. So what makes that a little more amazing is I think just a couple of those were at the airport, and most of those were in the the latter 6 months of 2017. So that's pretty amazing. When you think that that's 52 drivers, impaired drivers, who were off the streets, who didn't commit accidents, who didn't commit injuries or even fatalities in the city, it's pretty remarkable. He's still as tenacious as ever. He had 3 DUI arrests just about a week and a half ago in one shift. So I expect we might see him again up here next year. I have his MAD award. It's Mothers Against Drunk Driving as his Laguna Niguel top cop in DUI enforcement. And I'd like to present that to him first, and then we'll do the resolution if that's okay. So, Deputy John Pop, Laguna Niguel's top cop in DUI enforcement. We get together and take a pic? That'd be all right? Yeah, we're gonna take a quick pic.
Got one more. You know, when Deputy Pop came up here, I almost said, "It's good to see you again," and I thought that might be misinterpreted. So it's good to meet you. We've never seen each other before, so it's really nice. In addition to the award that you've already received from Others Against Drunk Driving, the city wanted to recognize you as well, and we put together a proclamation, a resolution on your behalf. It's suitable for framing, so we did so. And I'm going to read just a few of the excerpts from that. If you would turn around, there you go, so everybody can take a look at it. Deputy John Pop joined the Orange County Sheriff's Department in 2002, and in June 2017, he became a deputy in the city of Laguna Niguel. He's strongly aware of the importance of driving under the influence, and especially came to Laguna Niguel to fulfill the role of a full-time driving under the influence and traffic enforcement deputy. He was relentless in his pursuit of driving under the influence violators and set an example by arresting 52 impaired drivers. In the last 6 months of 2017, he's prevented countless accidents by saving our citizens from injury and death and demonstrating his tireless enforcement efforts of safeguarding the community against drunk and impaired driving. He continues his role as a driving under the influence and traffic enforcement deputy, making the roads of Laguna Niguel safe for everybody. On behalf of Laguna Niguel City Council, we do congratulate you and appreciate everything that you do. Thanks for keeping us safe, brother. Yeah, I understand that Deputy Pop has some family here. If you, that's good. That's great. This is big. Thank you. So nice. So nice to meet you. It's John Martinez. Hey, thanks. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too. It's a good-looking family. Thank you for coming out. You guys get in here. Oh, we got more.
Yeah, come on, it's good.
That's my line. Well, let's give him a big hand. Thank you so much. Yeah, there's definitely a dinner in that, but I think you're going to need a designated driver, just a guess. We have a proclamation on our agenda tonight for drowning prevention awareness, and Jeff Adams, our Orange County Fire Authority representative, was going to make that presentation tonight. Chief Adams is still out tending to the victims from the explosion today in Aliso Viejo. I can't overstate our appreciation for that, and I told Jeff, we had a text sent out to him a minute ago, that we're going to put this off until another meeting. He really wanted to be here for this. And so in his honor and in memory of those people that he's taking care of tonight, we're going to put that off, and we'll talk about it at our next council meeting. But if we could, why don't we take a moment and just appreciate that and give him a round of applause and our firefighters. And I, of course, meant to say our police chief and our entire Orange County Sheriff's Department Police Services. So thank you very much. I think that's the last one for down here, isn't it? Yeah, let's go back up. We have one more, but we'll go back up to the dais. Our last presentation tonight is from the Laguna Niguel Youth Committee. And at this time, I was going to ask our Youth Committee member, Alex Probolski, to come up and provide us an update. I can tell you that in addition to being on City Council, the mayor and I have the privilege of serving as liaisons to the Youth Committee. And we've gotten to know Alex, and I knew him ahead of time, and I know his family. Alex is a freshman at the Aliso Niguel High School. He's a member of the track and field team. He throws the shot put and the discus, so I'd advise you to duck if he starts swinging. He tells us that he joined the youth committee to unify the separate school groups, and his goals are to enhance his understanding of a committee setting, to help set up events, and to make Laguna Niguel a better place for all of its teenagers. Alex, thanks very much, bud, for being here, and if you would, please provide us an update on the youth committee.
So good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Jennings, and then council members Minigar, Davey, and Lindholm. As you said, my name is Alex Probolski. I'm a freshman at Aliso Niguel High School, and I'm here to give you an update on the youth committee. So for those who don't know, the youth committee is a group of 15 students from 5 different high schools this year, and we use our collaborative minds and abilities to have events and put on events and help other teenagers, out in our community. So, and also I would be completely remiss if I failed to acknowledge the outstanding city officials and people who helped make this possible, Gretchen and Sheila, whose leadership and guidance, without that would be, what we do is almost impossible. So thank you to them. Most recently, we had a high school, college, and job fair. And the goal of this was to, help teenagers who wanted, summer jobs or to get into colleges, kind of, learn who their employers and the people that they have to talk to are. Our attendance was far better than we had last year. Last year we had about 139 people show up. This year we had 204, so increase there. Students were encouraged to speak to representatives from, all 19 employers and 20 colleges. So we had a lot of different, people to talk to and, learn from there. I was very proud to see full attendance of the full youth committee, excluding one who was going to UCLA Bruins Day. So they're, pursuing their own college dreams. We worked basically to direct and assist the employers as well as the students to help, them connect with each other. So during the fair, I was sent on a mission. My mission was to, speak to the colleges and the employers and just see, what was going on. How could I, engage them and get other people to go speak to them. So, to one college, I became a race car driver. I knew everything about the engines and the car parts and everything that has to do with the car. Now, I'm only 15. I can't even get a permit yet, so it's kind of hard to, make it up all on the fly, but it worked. And to another college, I became an aspiring graphic designer. I wanted to create my own design company and, work and learn about that. And I completely played the part well. I'm actually really proud of myself for that. I just, tried to play the part as just someone looking as one of the people there. And I also, to another call, to the Marines, I said, I want to be a Marine. I want to fight for our country. And the Marines were, super helpful and really explained, what I could do and how I could, evolve in the ranks and get higher and, work hard and what it would bring to my life. So I found that, all these employers and colleges were super happy to, be there and ready to help all the students who, decided to show up. Overall, the event went spectacularly. We had a lot of people there. We had, people going to all the colleges. It wasn't just, the big event. We had USC there, and, some of the worries were that, only people would go to USC. But everyone went everywhere. All the colleges and all the employers got love. They all, had a lot of students willing to, go and speak to them. And I think it kind of showed that, we as teenagers with work and dedication can really make a difference and, do something well. So that was pretty cool. This coming Friday, our final event as a youth committee is the Music and Arts Festival. The goal of this event is to help aspiring artists and musicians, show their creative works to people. And because, it's kind of hard to, show everything in just a school or in a setting with just your family or whatever. So now we're trying to, build up their awesome art pieces through our festival. we're having entertainment provided by 3 bands of high schoolers and students. So we have Willie and Camposano, White Collar, and Hypnosis. This year we're also using a Snapchat filter because, you know, social media, it's pretty cool. So you'll basically be able to take a picture or a Snapchat picture, and it will show, you know, around your picture what the event is, and explain, you know, oh, we have this happening here. So then when people come over and come to the event or go near the event, then they'll see the Snapchat filter and possibly go if they don't hear about it already. Now, we hope for an even better turnout than our previous event, and hope all of you and everyone listening at home will join and join us in our exciting free event. It's this Friday, May 18th at 6:30 p.m. at Crown Valley Park. For those who want food, there will be an In-N-Out food truck from 7 to 8:30. And later, Frankie's Frozen Treats will be coming with items being sold, which is not part of the donation. Now, for the food, if you want to get In-N-Out food, there's a minimum of $12 donation. On behalf of each of my Laguna Niguel Youth Committee colleagues, and on behalf of the teens of Laguna Niguel, we thank you for your unending support and faith in us and providing the resources and tools we need to succeed. We look forward to the summer break to return, recharge with all our new ideas and new energy to make next year even more productive. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Alex. Does any of the council have any comments
any
or
questions?
Or anything? Good.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Alex. For the public, I just want you to know that if you ever had any doubt in the future of our country, you should attend one of these meetings. These are exceptional students, and I'd remind you that Alex did a presentation that not a lot of people could pull off, and he's only 15. So very, very well done. So thank you very much. Let's move now into our public communications. Any person wishing to address the City Council on any matter, whether or not it appears on this agenda, is required to complete a gold-colored request to speak form, which is available in the back corner by the lights. Please submit that form to the city clerk, and she will pass it along to us, so you can do that before you're heard by City Council. Each person will be given 3 minutes to speak, and I have 2 requests to speak. And City Clerk, are there any more slips received?
No, Mayor Pro Tem, that's it for now.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Make that 3. All right, let me get to these. The first one that I have is from John Ulrich. If you would please state your name and address.
Yes, sir. John Ulrich. I'm 30412 Northampton. I'm representing the Laguna Niguel Chamber of Commerce this evening. But first, I have to compliment Alex for that speech he just gave. Lions Club has a student speaker contest every year. So, Alex, we're going to recruit you. We're going to find you, trust me. So, good job. Anyway, I'm just going to give you a short update on what the Chamber's doing. This Friday morning, we have our monthly networking breakfast at El Niguel Country Club at 7:15 in the morning. A lot of you always go there. It's a lot of fun. But the board of directors is sponsoring this breakfast, and we're going to talk about the advantages of the Chamber for business. And secondly, we also sponsor the Government Affairs meeting first Friday of every month, and they're always pretty special to me. This month, we're having Senator Pat Bates come to give us an update on what's happening in Sacramento, so that ought to be pretty good. So that happens June 1st, the first Friday of the month, at 7:30 over at the community room across the hall. Also, if anybody wants to know what's going on with the Chamber, we have a website, lnchamber.com. Just ping that and you'll see what we're up to. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. The next speaker is Donna Mulvaney.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Jennings and City Council members. My name is Donna Mulvaney. I live at 23862 Windmill Lane, Laguna Niguel, California. I recently made a request at the first draft budget meeting. It was mainly about having the decking contractors make a bid on the cost of adding a shade cover over the 3 shallow lanes at the Crown Valley swimming pool. I'm here again tonight because with the Crown Valley Park Community Tier 3 improvement and the decision to include a new decking around the swimming pool to assure the aesthetics of the new Tier 3 improvements, which makes sense and will be a beautiful addition to the community center. My request, since the deck will be torn up, is to ask the deck contractor to make a bid on adding the shade cover for people that are so sensitive to the sun. Personally, I can no longer use the swimming pool due to my fair skin and having to go through radiation treatments and Mohs surgery 2 different times when I had skin cancer on my face. I've spoken to several people that do not use the swimming pool for the same reason as myself. So it's something that I know there's a survey going to be going on, and I know there's a need for this. So I would appreciate having the planning committee consider this request. If not this year, maybe next year. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Donna. All right. Without any, do we have any other gold slips? Great. Thank you. Then public communications is now closed. We'll move on to our consent calendar. We've got items 1 through 12. I'll ask my council colleagues, do you have any items that need to be pulled for comment?
No. Item number 4.
None.
None. Okay. Do I have a motion then to approve the balance of the consent calendar?
I'll make a motion.
I second.
Okay, the motion's made by Councilwoman Davies, seconded by Councilmember Minigar. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstains? The motion carries. All right, moving on to consent calendar item number 4. I'll get it out. Councilwoman Lindholm.
Thank you very much. This item has to do with medium tree replacement. There's a cash contract on that, and you will have received in your red folder an additional bit of information on this. My question on it had to do with the bid cost and the contingency funds. My understanding is that during this process, they realized that there were additional trees that had suffered from the
Beetle disease.
Yeah, from the beetle disease, and with that, the contract amount has been increased only in the contingency, which would have been to each and every one of the bidders. So I wanted that clarification. If there's any questions on that, otherwise, with a clarification on the total amount and why, I will move the item.
All right, any discussion amongst the council? Any, Councilwoman Lindholm, is there any need for further staff, or do you need comments from staff on that?
Would you like to make a further comment? All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
With that, you move the item?
I'm moving the item as described here with that additional amount.
Is there a second as amended? Okay, it's the motion's made by Councilwoman Lindholm, seconded by Councilwoman Davies. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstain? The motion carries. All right, our first discussion item this evening is community development item number 1, and that's a public hearing for zoning code amendment ZCA 1603 regarding congregate living facilities. City Manager Rich, could you please present the item for us?
Absolutely.
Thank
Jonathan Arduña, our planning manager, will be the item that's oh my gosh, can't talk tonight. Jonathan will be presenting the item for you.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Jennings and council members. We have a PowerPoint presentation for you this evening on this item. Okay, so if you direct your attention to your screen, the draft code amendment on congregate living facilities has been several years in the making. This originally came to the council's attention in August of 2016 as a result of an increasing number of resident complaints regarding impacts associated with these facilities. Consequently, the City Council took 2 actions. The first was adoption of a 45-day moratorium on the establishment of congregate living facilities in residential zones, and that moratorium was later extended to the maximum length of 2 years, which is set to expire in August of this year. Secondly, the City Council initiated a zoning code amendment to consider various alternatives for regulation of congregate living facilities. And that amendment has been making its way through the process. It was presented to the Planning Commission on May 9th of 2017. And after holding a public hearing, receiving input from the community largely in support of the ordinance, the Planning Commission took action to unanimously recommend that the City Council approve the ordinance with one modification. There was a proposed separation distance for group homes, and the Planning Commission recommended increasing that distance from 650 feet to 1,000 feet. So before we dig into the ordinance, there are a few terms we need to define. The first being, what is a congregate living facility? Basically, a congregate living facility is any residential facility where rooms without cooking facilities are rented independently and leased for a period of 30 days or more. And that 30-day time frame is significant in that anything less than 30 days would be subject to the city's prohibition on short-term rental. If you recall, the City Council took action on this, I believe, last year. So congregate living facilities fall into two general categories, the first being boarding house uses, which are currently addressed in the city's zoning code. Boarding house uses would include fraternity and sorority houses, some assisted living facilities, and with regard to these facilities, the city is able to exercise a broad range of regulatory discretion. These facilities are prohibited in all residential zones and are permitted only with approval of a conditional use permit in the public and institutional zoning district. The second main category is the residential care facility, or rather the state licensed residential care facility. And the city has very little regulatory discretion when it comes to these types of facilities, particularly for facilities that house 6 or fewer residents. For facilities that house 7 or more, the city treats them effectively as boarding houses. So traditionally, these have been the two main categories of congregate living facility. The issues that we have been experiencing lately are a result of an increase in a third category of use referred to as a group home. These are unlicensed facilities. However, because of certain protections at the state and federal level due to the disabled status of the residents in these facilities, the city does have limited discretion. So there's a regulatory gap, basically, that exists with these facilities. So with those three categories in mind, boarding houses, group homes, and residential care facilities, the zoning code ordinance before you this evening has two primary goals. The first is to preserve the residential character of the city's residential neighborhoods. And the second, equally as important, is to provide opportunities for the disabled to reside in a safe and structured single-family living environment supportive of recovery. In the absence of this ordinance, not only have our residential neighborhoods experienced negative impacts, the occupants of these facilities have also experienced negative impacts due to the operating practices of some less reputable facility operators. So with regard to the first category of use, the boarding houses, the code amendment would establish two subcategories. The large boarding house, which is 3 or more tenants, which is typically what you think of when you think of a boarding house, which would continue to be permitted in the public institutional zoning district subject to approval of the conditional use permit. And the small boarding house, which is basically this is someone renting out a room or two in their home. So this is currently a use that is permitted by right as an accessory use, and it would continue to be permitted in this manner. The code doesn't directly address it, so we're really clarifying the current practice when it comes to boarding houses. With regard to the second category of use, the licensed residential care facilities, Again, the regulations for these facilities are set more by the state. 6 facilities with 6 or fewer residents would continue to be permitted by right in all residential zones. Facilities with 7 or more residents would continue to be regulated as large boarding houses, meaning prohibited in all residential zones and permitted only with approval of a use permit in the public institutional zone. And with regard to the third category of use, the unlicensed group homes, which do include sober living homes. There's been a lot of information in the news recently on sober living homes. The city would be establishing a ministerial permit, a group home permit for group homes that house 6 or fewer residents. And this permit would be subject to approval by the Community Development Director. And as with all actions of the director, would be appealable to the Planning Commission and ultimately the City Council. And for facilities with 7 or more residents, these facilities would be regulated as large boarding houses, similar to the licensed residential care facilities. As part of that permit, group homes would be subject to a number of regulations. Shown here is a brief summary. The property owner's authorization would be required. The operator would need to submit verification that all residents of the facility were in fact disabled, and therefore reasonable accommodation of their situation would be warranted. In the absence of that disabled status, this would basically be considered a boarding house, which would be prohibited. So this permit establishes built-in accommodation for individuals with disabilities. The third requirement is that a house manager would be required to be present, and a 24-hour emergency contact would need to be provided to the city. All vehicles associated with the facility would need to be parked on site. As previously mentioned, these facilities would be required to be separated from other like facilities and also licensed residential care facilities by 1,000 feet, as recommended by the Planning Commission. The original distance, separation distance proposed was 650 feet. That number was based on a similar ordinance adopted by the city of Costa Mesa and has been reviewed by a trial court judge, which found no issue with that distance. It also is consistent with city notification requirements that establish a 300-foot radius from a property. So it is staff's position that the 650-foot distance is more defensible as compared to the 1,000-foot distance, but the courts have yet to give any firm direction either way. With regard to residents of these facilities that would be subject to eviction, the facility operator would need to contact their emergency contact and provide transportation. This is added to the ordinance in response to issues that have occurred in other local cities where individuals were basically tossed out on the street. And finally, the city would be granted, upon request, access to facility records as necessary to ensure compliance with the regulations included as part of the ordinance. Now, for sober living homes, which are a type of group home, there are additional requirements that would be in play. The first is that all individuals residing in a sober living home would be required to participate in recovery programs. Use of alcohol and prescription drugs would be prohibited on site. I believe the ordinance states that if someone has a specific prescription, they would be permitted to use that prescription under certain guidance. So it's not an outright prohibition, but generally the point is that we're trying to restrict access and create a safe and sober environment for individuals recovering from drug and alcohol addiction. The visitation policy that would be required would prohibit visitors after 10 p.m. And lastly, a good neighbor policy would be required that would discourage loud, profane, and obnoxious behavior. And this speaks specifically to the impacts that were experienced by Laguna Niguel residents that led to initiation of the code amendment. And the statement at the bottom of the slide there, this is a direct quote from the ordinance. Significant and or repeated violations of this section and or any other applicable laws and or regulations shall result in revocation of the group home permit. So if a facility fails to comply with the regulations as stated, the city would be revoking their permit and their ability to operate in the city of Laguna Niguel. In addition to the requirements stated, the amendment would include reasonable accommodation provisions, and basically this is a catch-all for an individual with disabilities who feels that not only these provisions, but any portion of the city codes or regulations, if they were to present a barrier to equal housing opportunities, that individual could apply for reasonable accommodation. And the community development director, subject to discretionary review, would have the ability to grant that approval. Because staff has attempted to build reasonable accommodation into this ordinance, we do not expect that these provisions would be invoked fairly often, if at all, and the bar would be set quite high for any such requests. With regard to existing group homes, I believe the city has 19 known group homes. With regard to those homes, if the ordinance were adopted, they would be required to make application for a group home permit within 90 days of the effective date of the amendment, and full compliance with the exception of the separation requirement would be required within 1 year. The separation requirement, obviously, if two facilities are located within 1,000 feet of each other, it would be difficult to decide which facility would need to cease operations. So those facilities would effectively be grandfathered in until such time as they can discontinue operation for a period of more than 1 year. So to very briefly, in crafting the draft ordinance, there were a number of alternatives considered, and these alternatives are available to the City Council. The first would be an outright prohibition on group homes in residential zones, and it is as detailed in your agenda report. The city attorney has noted that this would constitute a violation of state and federal law, and therefore this option is not recommended. Similarly, allowing approval of group homes subject to a discretionary permit could be problematic in that the wide range of discretion involved could be seen as a barrier to fair housing. The third option on your screen, the ministerial permit, that is what is proposed this evening. The staff report also addresses the possibility of a scaled back permit where the council would adopt, for example, the separation requirement, but dispense with the operational standards. And so there'd be some type of registration, and then once the facility was registered, there would be no further oversight. And lastly, the last option would be no action, which certainly there's a concern that this could lead to a proliferation of such facilities in residential zones. Not sure exactly how that would play out. We have seen an increase in the number of licensed facilities since adoption of the moratorium, and that may continue, we're not sure, relative to other cities and the coastal cities that have been the main target of this activity. The city has a relatively small number of both licensed and group home facilities. So in conclusion, staff is recommending that the council approve the draft code amendment, clarifying and establishing regulations for congregate living facilities in all zoning districts. Because this is an ordinance, the council would first need to hold a public hearing, which is the purpose of tonight's meeting, discuss the item, and if the council was inclined to adopt the ordinance, you would need to place the item on your next agenda for adoption. So with that, we'll conclude my comments, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you, Planning Manager Orduña. Before we move on to council questions or comments, I want to check with City Attorney. Did you have anything that you wanted to add to those comments?
No, think that was very comprehensive and sufficient.
Great, thank you. Let's then open this up for public hearing. Oh, actually, before we do that, let me see if I have any questions by council members of staff. We can get to comments on it, but any questions? Okay, Councilmember Miniker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Two quick questions for you. What was the source of your information on your GIS mappings? I noticed that there are a bunch of locations that you're identifying as unlicensed sober living homes. I compare your 2015 map versus 2017, and when I'm in San Joaquin Hills area of the city, I talk to a lot of people. They keep telling me that there are 5 or 6 sober living facilities there. Now, I don't see those homes being identified on neither of your maps. So the first question is, what is your source? Is it basically from the emails that you receive at the city hall that residents are identifying that in my neighborhood there's this sober living facility, or you have other sources?
That is correct. It is, the information that we have is based on input from the public. There is no registry or database for these unlicensed facilities.
Because there is another location in Coronado Point, which is a gated community, and there is another facility that I've been observing myself that I know is a sober living facility. So somehow we need to add those into your database, but we need to validate those facilities that yes, indeed, that's what they do.
Absolutely. Any known facilities, if the public or if the council is aware of any facilities, you can forward those to us, and we will investigate that. And if it is verified, we will add that to our database.
And then my second question, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, if I may, is in reference to the classification would be an applicant would be coming to the city and would apply for conditional use permit.
The applicant would be coming to the city and would be applying for a ministerial permit.
If we decide tonight to go that route.
That is what is proposed, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Councilwoman Davis?
Thank you. My question, one thing I really like that we have in there, that they would be required to provide transportation once they are done. One thing we've found is, unfortunately, a lot of times after treatment, not everyone is successful in their treatment, and they get curbed, basically, that's what they call it. And they don't have the money or the means to get back to where they came from, and a lot of them are coming from out of state. So how would we enforce this, you know, making sure, because how are we going to keep track who's in there and when they're done with their treatment and where they live and who's taking them back?
The ordinance requires that the operator maintain records on all occupants of the facility. I would anticipate that there would be some type of review. I don't know if it would be annual or biannual or how we would do that, but periodically the city would be checking in with these operators, reviewing those records to see if in fact they remain in compliance with the ordinance.
I mean, how do you, I'm just curious, how can you enforce this? How can you prove this? You know, do we have to have staff? I mean, they're going to call saying, all right, show me, because obviously due to privacy, you're not going to be putting people's names on there. Are you?
Well, I think that would be up to the operator, how much personal information they disclose to the city. I think the permit would require that the operator consent to these terms. So there is somewhat of an obligation on the operator to follow through if the city were to become aware of someone who was turned out without being provided transportation. That could be grounds for revocation of the permit.
Okay. And one thing I wanted to make a note, I know right now we have Congressman Rohrabacher is in the process of trying to get a bill, HE 5724, and that I believe would also make it where the treatment would not be in residential areas. Is that correct? City Manager?
Councilmember Davies, his proposed legislation would actually allow local governments to completely ban sober living homes from their communities.
And I do know through the ACCLC right now, we're working with him on that as well, trying to work on the verbiage and to see, because this was, I believe, partial. Congressman Issa, who's retiring, this was something that he had started, and I think Congressman Rohrabacher is taking over on that. I'm not sure where they're at this point, but that could completely change things if that went through as well down the line, correct?
And it's just been introduced at this
Right.
time.
Okay. Thank you very much. No more questions.
Councilwoman Lindholm?
Thank you. Thank you. Excellent presentation. My question is, we want everybody to get better and be out there and be self-sustaining and live a great life. A question on the 1,000-foot requirement. Is there any requirement that it not, or could we add that it is not 1,000 feet from a school or a child care facility in terms of a distance, or is that written into the statute?
Councilmember Lindholm, if I can respond to that, I would be hesitant about including such a provision. I know there's concern, obviously, by parents of school children at a school, but the idea is to sort of maintain the residential character of the neighborhood, and part of that would be allowing or not prohibiting sober living facilities from being relatively close, not certainly next to one, but relatively close to schools. And I would have the concern that that might provide a basis for challenging the ordinance.
If I can add to that, based on the literature that we have reviewed, the separation requirement, at least the arguments that have been successful in defense of that requirement, they're more about preserving the residential character of the neighborhood and preventing an institutionalized character that could result from clustering of these homes. So it's as much to protect the neighbors as it is to protect the occupants of these facilities. I think if we were to require a distance separation from schools, that speaks more to, I think, certain judgments about the individuals in these facilities, and that could potentially be problematic.
Any other questions, Councilmember Menninger?
One more question. Mr. Dixon, I got a legal question for you. With regard to the potential ramification of an HOA involvement in this pursuit, where do we stand once we choose one of the 4 options presented to us?
Councilmember Menninger, let me respond by saying this. We've had a lot of dealings with HOAs on sober living facilities, and there's been various attempts to enforce the CC&R provisions against commercial use of property. And this, as I understand, hasn't been successful. The HOAs have, in a few instances, sort of tried to get together and convince prospective operators, owners of of houses that are proposed to be used for sober living facilities to not make such use. Our ordinance really doesn't relate to the homeowners associations. It sort of would be in place of the attempts that they've initiated to regulate and prohibit them in their neighborhoods. I'm not sure that answers your question.
No, you did. If I understand you correctly, what you're saying is it's going to be an umbrella ordinance that HOAs basically by default have to abide by.
Well, yes. I mean,
because we are a higher authority.
Well, certainly, but again, the HOAs really can't regulate these type of facilities. That's been well established. We believe cities can, and so we would be taking that role from the HOAs.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. A couple of questions of staff, and I want to piggyback on what you just said. I didn't see in your presentation that we had a notice requirement or what form of notice is going to be sent out to the operators so that they know that they have their 90-day compliance window going? And in doing so, can't we also communicate with the HOAs to help us identify operators and facilities that should be receiving that notice?
Absolutely.
And what type of notice is it? Has that been contemplated yet? I assume it's in writing. So.
The ordinance does not define what effort the city would, how we would conduct that notification, but certainly there would need to be outreach to all known facilities, and it's an excellent suggestion that we would also partner with HOAs to identify facilities that are not in our inventory.
They really are boots on the ground, so to the extent that we're having trouble identifying those, I'd like for them all to have an opportunity to at least let us know who they think it is. It doesn't harm us to send out notice to everyone that we find out from, because they either are compliant or they're not, and if they would need to be compliant, if they are such a facility covered by the ordinance, then they would have received the notice. And I'd also recommend that that we advertise, like we do many other ordinances and other public notices and things, that we give public notice of this generally either through our own website and the newspaper and that type of thing, to let everyone know so that everyone's on notice, because this is we're trying to capture a full compliance environment here, and the more notice we give, the more likely we are to get those people inside that the framework of what we're trying to accomplish. The other thing is I was trying to find it in my notes. You had on the screen the statement at the bottom that had to do with, I'll tell you, there it is, go back, significant and or repeated violations. I would encourage you to take all the and/ors. The use of the and/or creates statutory confusion. That really does mean or, because and/or means or. So if you get any one of those, what I don't want is for anybody looking at this in future say that the council somehow contemplated that it was and, or that there was one or whatever it might be. So to be more clear, that I would recommend that the ordinance be read significant or repeated violations of the section or any other applicable law, so that way any one of those is a trigger point and we don't get tripped up in double or triple negatives on that. Also, the last point I was going to ask about was this the 1,000-foot versus the 650-foot ordinance. I assume that is a direct, a topographical direct line between the facilities, correct? It's not a travel distance around a neighborhood or something like that?
Correct.
All right, and I read in the notes and I saw the Planning Commission recommended 1,000 feet, and I applaud their robustness in some regard. I don't know that that I'm willing to adopt that. I think 650 feet's a long way away. To be blunt, I'd probably prefer the 1,000 feet, but I'm concerned that we would then just immediately trip up on litigation or something that might interfere with the whole purpose of this, which is to do what we can to gain compliance rather than to trigger a problem. Am I correct in stating, City Attorney Dixon, that you think that you continue to think that a 1,000-foot prohibition would probably come much closer to triggering a litigation response than the 650?
Mayor Pro Tem, yes, I am concerned about that.
All right.
We've seen the 650 has been accepted by a trial court. 650 is a fairly long ways. 1,000 feet is appreciably longer, obviously. I don't want our ordinance to be a target.
I see. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all the questions I had. Unless there's any other questions, I was going to open up public comment now. So at this time, the public hearing is now open to receive testimony from the public regarding zoning code amendment ZCA 16-03 for congregate living facilities. I have one request to speak on this item, and City Clerk Gomez, do I have any other requests to speak? Okay, at this time I'll ask Mike Whipple. If you come forward, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you, sir.
Mike Whipple. My family resides at 30896 Rivera Place. I'm here this evening as an affiliate of Advocates for Responsible Plant Treatment. Have a few comments, a few questions. Obviously, you've been at work for a long time on this, and it's very, very well thought out. But the ordinance provides for substantial operational standards. But in the report and in the analysis, it says there's no fiscal impact on the city. hard for me to imagine that you have a comprehensive set of standards that that an operator has to comply with, and there isn't some fiscal impact on the city. In order to have the verification of the standards, there needs to be some review by city staff. Now, it could be that there was a choice made not to have a fee for that review or not to identify any costs because of some other reason. You didn't want to create a fiscal argument from the operator that might invalidate the ordinance. So what I would suggest is to recognize that there is some fiscal impact, but either the city is going to pay that cost, so there is no cost to the operator, or there will be some sort of fee that will be enacted that the operator will pay for that compliance requirement. The second issue that I have a question on the 1,000 feet also. And what I always prefer is when you're creating a new standard, that you have some rationale, some evidence, some reason why there's 1,000 feet. And we know that for many years, 300 feet has kind of been the standard for notice. And my thought is that perhaps that 300 feet was set as a standard when most of the development was on flat land, 4 units to the acre.
You have 20 seconds.
Today, in Laguna Niguel, we have a lot of open space, a lot of larger lots. So 1,000-foot distance or 650-foot distance for a high-density development area might not be reasonable. But 300 might not be reasonable in our residential areas where we have a lot of open space.
That's your time.
So those are the two areas I'd like to have some additional discussion.
Thank you very much. Received 2 other requests to speak. The next one is for Liz Avila. Welcome, Ms. Avila. If you would state your name and address.
My name's Liz Avila, and I'm at 58 Mallorca. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Jennings and City Council members. I'm here to offer a very strong support for the draft code amendment. My written comments are included in your report, and they're included in the last page of your report. I would just like to urge the City Council to consider changing the compliance time period requirement for existing homes from 1 year to 90 days. This is listed on page 24 of your report, section 5. I believe that waiting another year for these existing homes to comply is a really long time. And lastly, I just want to thank the City Council members for all of your efforts, and also the Planning Commission. And in particular, I wanted to come tonight to thank your city staff, especially Jonathan Ordunez, for being the ultimate professional, very patient, and very responsive. For the past 2 years, I put in a lot of calls to the city, and he was always very responsive to all of my requests. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That makes our heart very warm to get compliments. Thank you very much, man. The last request to speak I have is from Sean Lehman. Welcome to the podium. Please state your name and address. Thank you.
Sean Lehman, 30922 Canterbury Place. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and council members.
Thank you.
I have to refer to my phone here because I was making notes as we went along. But during the presentation, one of the things that was pointed out was a potential requirement that a facility operator will be required to provide transportation to evicted tenants. Didn't mention to where. Is it to the city line? I think that needs to be flushed out and delineated a little bit better. I've heard of some other areas requiring tenants to show that they have returned bus or plane fare back to their origination, whatever state they were shipped here from. But I think just leaving it nebulous and saying they need to provide transportation, that leaves a lot of room for abuse to be left open. Also, regarding disclosing resident names or verifying information, again, I don't have the gentleman's name who made the presentation, but if you're counting on facility operators to voluntarily comply and be forthcoming with anything, you're fooling yourself. What we've seen dealing with these people is they're not. Everything needs to be verified. Details need to be disclosed. There have been numerous instances reported even, I can send you links of these operators even furnishing drugs to their residents to get them re-addicted. It's been reported over and over again. This is not you know, by and large, a nice industry. And I don't think it's an industry that can just implicitly be trusted to do the right thing. In my view, this policy needs to be as restrictive as possible without permitting any unneeded latitude at all. I know you want to keep it within the bounds of what can be defended. Your Mayor Pro Tem, your remark that 650 feet you think is okay rather than 1,000 because there's a fear of litigating it. I would say don't be afraid to push the envelope. The only way these limits are going to increase is if we have city leaders who are willing to try to increase these, and if we have a city attorney who's willing to try to defend that. If it comes under fire and it looks like it's not going to work, then reduce it back to 650. But the only way we're going to be able to get something bigger is if somebody's willing to push it. That's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your comments. One last request to speak, and I'll be going once. If there's any more, you'll need to turn them in now. So the last one will be Jim. Well, there is one more, so this will be the next to last one. The speaker is Jim Falk. If you could please give us your name again and your address, Mr. Falk. Welcome.
Yes, my name is Jim Falk, F-A-L-K. I live at 25242 Monte Verde in Laguna Niguel. I realize, council members, that this type of issue related to sober living and modifications to the profile of the city is not necessarily unique with other cities as well. One of the things that I think I've grown to love about our city is the safety factor that's always been part of the profile of the city and the services that have been provided by our residents. I think volunteering is one of the things that the city has been known for, and I appreciate the opportunity to make some comments with regards to this particular issue. I've noticed that it seems that these locations, as there have been developed in our city, have been difficult to find for one reason or another, and rumor and innuendo with regards to who has a facility and who doesn't is something that can be very disarming and difficult to find out. So I think there ought to be a process developed to try to find the exact number of facilities that are in the city. I'm not sure the best way to do that. Advertising was mentioned by Mr. Jennings. There are other types of ways that this can be done, services provided. Also, the comments with regards to costs of having this sort of process happening in the city with regards to maintenance and compliance. There might have to be people that are associated with tracing compliance. The issues related to the type of service that's provided in individual homes can be extremely difficult. The modification of what type of services might be recalled with regards to medical services and delivery of ambulance services, etc. Additional policing that might be required for accidents that happen in a home, and all the things associated with death and difficulty with medication can be problematic for a city. So when thinking about these things, I think it would be important for the community to understand exactly what the city feels about it in advance of making decisions with regards to specific recommendations by Mr. Dixon or other people associated with finding compliance issues with regards to state and county issues. My feeling is that it would be interesting to see what type of questionnaire would be delivered to a potential vendor of these services.
You have 15 seconds.
And basically how that process of developing, locating them would be. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Falk. Our last speaker tonight is Mike Simarusti. Welcome, sir. If you would please state your name.
Good evening, everyone. Mike Simarusti, 29931 Oberlin Court, and I'm a 30-year resident.
Welcome.
Thank you. I kind of wait to the last because I like to hear people's comments first, so I kind of snuck my card in last. I would say I would agree with the gentleman, you know, Mayor Pro Tem, when you were saying you felt more comfortable with the 650 feet. I think it's, you know, we're looking to, you know, city leaders to really push those boundaries. And I would also agree, you know, I think the 1,000 foot is reasonable. I think 650 feet, if you go walk it off, it's really not that far. So 1,000 feet, I think, should be the standard. And, you know, if something does happen, then it gets pushed back to 650. But I think going with 650, we're not really testing the boundaries of what cities can do. And I personally don't see the downfall of that. There was also a comment about trying to get HOAs involved. I know there's a lot from, you know, feedback I've heard from people. There's a lot of sober living homes that are not on the radar screen. And I think you guys have already mentioned some of those. So I think not only talking to HOAs, but putting something out, and maybe this is what you were talking about in the newspaper, letting people know, hey, come forth if you have information about, you know, sober living homes. Get it on the radar screen. You know, let's, you know, kind of open the closet. Let's let everything out. Let's put it, you know, on the record, and that will prevent new ones from popping up, whether it's 650 or 1,000 feet. So, you know, I'm strongly encouraging not only the HOAs, but, you know, for other areas that don't have HOAs, you know, they got to somehow know about this. The reason I'm kind of, I guess I was a little bit uninformed about this, you know, whole group housing until a neighbor of mine a few houses down wanted to open up a sober living home. And I'll just say that this person is not a very reputable person in doing so. His intentions were absolutely the wrong ones and probably gives sober living homes a bad name. And I have talked to Jonathan a few times about some of these issues, and he's been really great about getting back. Super guy. So you got a good one on your hands here. But I am concerned about, you know, the people that just don't want to do it for the right reasons. And I think the other thing we should, you know, I know the city's hands are tied to a lot of extent, but I think also, you know, these California state, you know, license facilities too, those seem a little bit more scarier too.
You have 20 seconds.
And I know the city can't do much, but it appears to me that these don't have any limits. You can kind of open up one after another, and I think that's probably going to be the next thing coming. I know there was a comment made that during this moratorium, more state license facilities were opening up, and I think you're probably going to see that trend happening, especially if there's no limitation in boundaries. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And we don't have any more comment cards, do we, City Clerk Gomez?
No, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to close the public hearing. Let's go back to City Council. You've heard from the public. You've heard from staff. Want to check and see if you have any comments. Councilwoman Davies.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Jonathan, this was really part of my question. First of all, great comments from the public. Greatly appreciate it. In regards to the transportation, and that was one of my concerns is, you know, where is this? Is it transportation of where they came from? You know, as if you look at your driver's license or what it may be, as well as when we were talking about that, I mean, I'm seeing staff in my mind, and I'm thinking, are we going to have extra staff to enforce this? Is there going to be a fee? You know, what's a fiscal, you know, concern here? Thank you.
Couple points on that. First off, the way the ordinance is written, it states that transportation shall be provided to the address on the occupant's driver's license or their permanent address provided on the occupant's application. So it does specify the location. It also notes that the occupant's emergency contact would need to be notified 24 hours prior to release. So that's just some of the technical aspects of the ordinance. As far as staffing and fees, the ordinance does include a provision for establishment of a fee. That would be a separate action that would come back to the city council. And the way I would envision that working, I think, and well, borrowing from the city of Costa Mesa, I think they're on their second or third amendment of their ordinance. And this is going to be an iterative process. So certainly we're going to, if this is adopted, we may be back in front of the city council tweaking it as we go to fine tune it. I think with all ordinances, but particularly with something like this, that is going to be part of the process. And as part of that, if we are finding that this is sucking up a significant amount of staff time, that would be relayed to the city council. For the moment, given, again, the relatively small number of facilities, it is possible that this may be a very straightforward process, that we may find willing operators, but we won't know until we get started. So I think the answer is the ordinance is really, it's a starting point.
And then real quick, in regards to you said, obviously, third party must be notified, but maybe we should put a time in when the person should be given the opportunity to go back home. Because, I mean, is it 30 days that the owner, can get them back, or is it, within 72 hours? Otherwise, they go out there and pretty soon, this is one of the reasons why we've got an increase in homelessness as well. So I wouldn't want to leave it where there's really no discrepancy of how long it takes for them to actually take the person and whether it's a bus or a plane ticket. I would probably put a time on that. So they've got, once they're leave the facility, they've got maybe 72 hours or something like that, that they are transferred. And then real quick too on that is, I know we're talking the HOAs. Another thing I think we could work with police services is when we do the neighborhood watch programs, we could implement that in as well, because neighborhood watch programs, I mean, they're the ones, HOA, the HOAs, they go to the board meeting, they'll hear from those that show up. I mean, I'm on my board, very seldom do people show up, but neighborhood watch, they're really the ones that are watching those neighborhoods, and they know and they see. So if we can include that in as well, but I'll let you finish that. And thank you. That's it, Mayor Pro Tem.
Great, thank you. I want to piggyback on that for a second, and I'll get to the other comments. It seems to me that you raise a good issue that maybe with the ordinance should include a default, so that if we're not provided with the address that appears on the driver's license, and we're not provided with the application, and we're not provided with the emergency contact, then it would be some number, and I don't know, we could make up a number, $500 or something, that the applicant, that the facility operator would have to pay for transportation costs in the event that they don't comply with that. Or that number could be $1,000, depending on whether, you might want to cover a plane ticket across the country if needed. Certainly if we're requiring them to travel within 72 hours, the cost of those tickets are going to be quite high. It could be a bus ticket, but I don't know if that's really available from Laguna Niguel in a feasible way. So what I'm trying to get is, without being punitive, to actually provide something that there's two things balancing in my mind right now. One, I think we're going to get an argument from some people that they're not going to provide that information, certainly not to us, one, because of the government, and two, because HIPAA would probably preclude them in some instances from telling us that. And so if they're unwilling to disclose that to us for enforcement purposes, we just need to get them to comply that they did one of three things, which is, either send them to where they came from on their driver's license or last residence on their application, or they paid them some X number of dollars as a travel voucher. And I just offer that up as a question.
The way the provision's written, it says in instances of occupant eviction or involuntary termination, basically travel expenses shall be provided. So it's pretty much instantaneous. We wouldn't have instances where people are evicted and they're left to fend for themselves for several days before they are transported. With regard to paying people a set fee, the ordinance actually specifically prevents that. That was an issue that had occurred in other cities where the operators were just cutting people a check, and people would prefer to take the check rather than
Oh,
the,
I see, and they were using it for purposes the operator might not have
Exactly.
wanted, I see.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But I think we could add some language to make it even more clear that that it's basically upon release, the person needs to be furnished with transportation.
Well, and I guess the part that's sticking in my mind is how do you go about compelling that use of transportation? Because I think your point is you can offer it to them and they're going to say, well, they didn't want the transportation, they declined it. And so therefore they're still here somewhere. So and I'm not sure constitutionally if we actually have the ability to force people to get on a bus and go somewhere. So I just want you, and this isn't the final reading of this ordinance, so I'm only offering the suggestion to look through it through that filter, see if there's any traps in there that we're not thinking of, and I'd ask Attorney Dixon to look at it as well, because I don't want to trip up constitutionally on trying to make somebody travel because we don't have that control over them, but we can certainly make it a requirement for their discharge from a facility, that be offered. Other council comments? Councilwoman Lindholm, anything?
No, thank you. I want to thank the members of the audience, and I want to, for your very thoughtful comments and understanding of what the issues are in regards to the ordinance, and the entire council for spending, I think, about 2 years on this, trying to find a solution that works for those in need and for those who are in the neighborhoods. I understand this is a first reading, so I will go with that for now as comments. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councilwoman Lindholm. Any comments? Councilman Mendigar.
Yes, 6 quick items. The first one is Jonathan.
Are there subparts to those 6?
The first one is with respect to lessons learned. When you researched the cities of Costa Mesa, Newport Beach, and Orange, in reference to the way they've drafted their resolution, or in this case would be their ordinance, what takeaways can we have so that we can refine or fine-tune this ordinance, which happens to be the first reading by us?
Generally, the ordinance as written incorporates basically the latest and greatest as available from those cities. The travel provision is something that Costa Mesa recently added. That was not part of their original ordinance.
So if I may interject, this is subsequent to the lawsuit by the settlement of the lawsuit by the city of Costa Mesa as a municipal corporation in the state of California.
I believe you're referring to the city of Newport Beach?
Costa Mesa.
Costa Mesa. Settlement?
$4.1 million.
Councilman Mendigar, a couple of things. There's been different settlements with Newport Beach and Costa Mesa. My understanding is that one of the recent settlements with Costa Mesa included the operators having to provide for this type of provision, where they would do something to take care of discharged people.
Okay, so to get back, this is accumulation or collection of the best that we have in Orange County.
That is correct.
Okay. The second item is in reference to the police department. I mean, somehow we have to have some kind of databasing. Somehow we have to put teeth in this program, that the police department ought to have a list of all these congregate sober living homes facilities, so that the residents would feel much more comfortable. Specifically in my area, that constantly all my neighbors keep talking to me. Anytime I'm walking, they come to me. They say, oh, what's going on in that home? I say, we're monitoring. That's all I can say.
It is not uncommon for city code enforcement staff and police services to work together on problem cases. Presumably, if there was something that were to become an issue, we would certainly be sharing that, and whatever database we have, we would be sharing that information as well. I don't think that's a problem.
Because my observation is in reference to in 2015, we had 6. In 2018, we had 16 plus 7 that I personally know. So the number comes out to be almost, 26 unlicensed facility in this great city. And somehow we want to make sure that we keep track of those and then we add them into our unofficial informal listing. The next one is in reference to 300 versus 600 and some versus 1,000. I personally do feel comfortable with almost 1,000 linear feet from adjacent facility. So that would be my personal position on that. The next one is in reference to application. Some people may call it or permit, or some people may call it compliance fees. I think somehow we want to make sure that the community development department or the planning department would not be overwhelmed, or somehow we have to establish the fee process for the applicants so that, the operator would be paying for that. But maybe a part of the second reading, because this is the first time that we are discussing this. So I leave it open at this juncture. With that, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Great, thank you very much. Any other comments? Oh, one more.
Thank you. Very quickly, first of all, I think want people to understand that these facilities are needed. But you have good actors and then you have bad actors. And you've got facilities that are run the correct way. And when I talk to the owners, they're actually behind things like this because they want it to be weeded out so that, they're run well. And again, this is also about those living in there. Our job is to protect them as well. When you look at the money that their families are spending, they're trusting and they want to make sure that they're getting good care and that they're not just being, curbed to the side. So not only are these ordinances looking to protect those that are in there, but it's also there for protection and the safety of our residents. So it's hand in hand. So I do thank those that are doing it the right way, and this is something that will hopefully weed out the bad actors. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Councilwoman Davies. A few comments by me. One is I really appreciate the comments from the public tonight. I noticed something about each of you that is unfortunate for you, which is that you all seem to be very battle-worn by this, that you've been living with it and thinking about it for a long time. But through that comes a lot of experience and a lot of very good information. So these comments were very helpful to me tonight. I wrote most of them down, and we've been talking about them tonight. One of the things that we didn't talk about, one of the speakers brought it up, was from where did we get, or what was the idea behind the 1-year compliance period, and why does it need to be 1 year? Couldn't it be something less? And I think the proposal was 90 days from the speaker, but I wanted to give Jonathan a chance to speak to that.
I think the time frame could be reduced. There are a number of standards that an existing operation would have to comply with. Some of it could involve they might have to change their management staff, for example, if the current house manager doesn't meet the requirements. So there are some things that certainly would take some time. A year may be too much. I wouldn't want to go any less than 6 months, knowing the way that these things go.
Well, and I'm being passed a note, and I appreciate that. I think a compromise position would be the end of this year. It's finite. We know what it is. It's not a moving target for all of them a year from whenever. It's a hard down date. I'm anticipating that the reading of that would come back within the next 30 to 45 days, certainly in one of our June, is that right? One of our June meetings. So by that time, they would have 6 months, and 6 months would be good. If anybody needed a variance or something, I guess they would tell us about it. But I think the speaker was spot on. It's too long. I don't know why if they need compliance, they can get compliance, and 6 months is a long time. Very few things do we have that have longer than a 6 month window. In fact, most don't have 6 months. So I think that's a very good point. We've had this discussion about 650 feet versus 1,000 feet. This very practical question that I ask is, are we aware of any facilities right now, 2 of which fall within 1,000 feet of each other? Will we immediately be rejecting somebody for an existing application? And I did not read the ordinance, by the way, to apply to existing applications. Is that correct? So if I'm looking this way because maybe there's an answer over there, but.
Mayor Pro Tem, it will apply, but there's a grandfathering in for the separation requirement.
That's what I was asking. Okay, so, but are we aware currently if we have two facilities that are operating within 1,000 feet or 650 feet?
I believe we have 6.
6 that
That
fall
we are
within
aware
that?
of, yeah.
And is that, in answering my question, are you answering the 1,000 or the 650?
The 650.
So
I believe we have 11 for the 1,000.
For the 1,000?
Sorry, yeah.
Well, which is, based upon the relatively few numbers that we have, is a good indication of what that problem is. The speaker was right that there's a reason behind these numbers. I think at 650, we are on the outside of an envelope hoping that the extension of the 300 and something feet would reach to 650. It's essentially a doubling of what had been found previously. At 1,000 feet, I haven't run a tape on every neighborhood in town, but it's a long way. We frequently run 500 feet in our minds because we have to do it for conflict for projects that come before the council. So I know that 650 feet, I can calculate that out from my house, but I can't do it for every neighborhood in town. I do think that we're pushing the boundaries here, and I'll just tell you bluntly that I like this policy because it is ministerial, it's neutral, it's not intended to be punitive, and we are not trying to draw litigation by imposing it. We are literally trying to use legislative efforts to try to put what constraints we can on these types of operations in our city, and we use our advocacy skills for people like Congressman Rohrabacher and HR 5724 that would give cities the authority to ban these things outright. And I can't promise you how a council, especially this one, might vote on something like that, but I can imagine that that would be very welcome. I think that's a hard-fought thing to get nationally, but at least that's happening. So on that side, we do our advocacy and try to get more, and practically speaking, we try to save the city money, resources, and risk, and we're trying to do the right thing, and I think doubling the expanse to 650 is certainly getting us very far down that road. If we find encroachment on that, we always have the ability to come back and revise it at some later date. I think that's it, unless anybody had any further comments. I'm recognizing a consensus amongst the council that seems to be in favor of the ministerial review for alternative 3. I think that's it. If that's on page 7 of the staff report, we need to make sure that that's noted to staff going forward. Is there anyone who's not in favor of ministerial review? Okay, so saying that, I do see a consensus amongst that. I've heard Councilmember Menegar's preference on the 1,000-foot. Do we have comments from other council about
That was my only comment. I think the 1,000-foot would work for me.
You do?
So I think we go with that.
Okay,
That's my suggestion.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I have another question, then we can finalize our decision-making process.
Sure.
I neglected to ask you this question. What is the policy with regard to on-site parking for all vehicles for each facility? Do we have any clause? I didn't see that.
All vehicles associated with the facility are required to be parked on site.
Okay. Confirmed. Thank you.
And on-site means?
Either in the driveway or the garage or somewhere else on
Perfect.
the
No street
private
park-
property,
That
not on
doesn't
the street.
include street parking?
Does not.
Okay. All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, with that, as modified with ministerial review and counting votes, I think I have a consensus of 1,000 feet. With that, is there a motion to move the item?
If I may interrupt, Mayor Pro Tem,
Oh, yes,
I
please.
believe you also wanted to get the compliance date moved to the end of the calendar year.
Oh, yeah, thank you for that. Yes, and that's the December 31st, 2018 compliance date. And with that, I would entertain a motion.
And
Well,
I
it's the first
apologize.
reading though, right? So-
Once again, you actually need to waive the reading of the full text prior to considering it.
Okay, the recommendation is that we hold the public hearing. We do that. Do I need to read the title of the proposed ordinance?
Yes.
Okay, and I will. That's ordinance number 2018-XXX, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Laguna Niguel, California, adopting zoning code amendment ZCA 1603, amending Laguna Niguel Municipal Code sections 9-1-32 residential districts, 9-1-42 non-residential districts, 9-1-111 discretionary review authority, 9-1-142 definitions, and Laguna Niguel Gateway Specific Plan, Section 4.3 allowable uses, and adding sections 9-1-38 group homes and 9-1-39 reasonable combinations to clarify and establish regulations for congregate living facilities in all zoning districts. I'd move that we waive the reading of the full text of the ordinance.
Just a quick moment, I think you said triple X, and I believe there's 4.
I've only got
No?
3 on my
Three.
notes, but maybe.
Three.
I got 4 here.
I've got 4 as well.
That's funny because I have 3, but okay, so
Just wanted
4X.
to make sure whatever.
Quad X, not triple X.
Quad X, okay, thank you. Waive the reading of the full text of the ordinance. We have considered the ordinance and
So to
stated
waive
our
the
changes.
reading, you're going to need a vote.
That's right. So the vote now is make a motion to waive the reading.
I'll make a motion to waive.
And is there a second?
I second.
All right, it's moved by Councilwoman Davies, seconded by Councilmember Mendigar. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any other further action required on that? Great. Thank you very much, and thank you to the public for sticking it out and for your comments. I appreciate that.
Well, I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem, you waived the reading, but you haven't taken the vote on the actual
the action,
ordinance
sorry.
yet with your 3 amendments.
I was looking at you for that. I was trying to get it. It's okay.
My
Okay.
apologies.
All right, so then I would entertain a motion for the,
I would move to direct the proposed ordinance with any changes that we've discussed, those items that were so noted, to be placed on the agenda for the next regular meeting of the City Council for adoption.
I'll second it.
great, moved by Councilmember Lindholm, seconded by Councilwoman Davies. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now I can say thank you. Thank you very much. All right, that concludes our community development item. We move on to our last discussion item this evening, which is an approval of a design concept for bus shelter and trolley stops. City Manager Rich, please introduce the item.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. This is an exciting item that is greatly going to improve the look of our bus shelters, and I know you personally have been working on the committee that's been addressing this item. So I will turn it over to Director Abazadeh for his presentation on this.
Honorable Mayor Pro Tem and City Council members, we have 36 bus shelters in town, and as the pictures tell the story, they're somewhat outdated. They have been neglected by the owner of the shelters, and they're in various states of disrepair. Again, pictures tell the story. So City engaged RJM Design, and when they started putting some design concepts together, the Design Review Committee, comprised of Mayor Pro Tem Jennings, Councilmember Miniger, and city staff, felt that we should take advantage of the recently approved monument signs and use the colors and textures that the City Council approved for the monument signs. So with that in mind, the Design Review Committee wanted to make sure that the new shelters are open, safe, secure, very attractive. They wanted to make sure that there was plenty of lighting for security purposes, and these lights would be powered by solar panels concealed with the roof structure. Also, the shelter roof and posts would be metal and painted to look like Corten steel. In the case of the monument signs that we just looked at, Corten steel tends to rust over time and stain drips from it. We wanted to make sure that it looked like Corten steel without the mess that it causes. The main support column would have a gray finish at the base with natural stones on the top with a halo-lit monochromatic city seal. The shelter would also have concrete seats with matching trash cans, and here are the pictures of the proposed seats and the trash cans. So this takes us to the design concept. What you have is an overall 21 feet shelter in length. It's roughly 9.5 feet in height. That's from the bottom of the column to the top. And at the base, the column is 3 feet and 1 inch. The overall height, the overall width of the shelter, including the roof that you see, And by the way, it's kind of difficult to see on the picture, but the top is slightly darker. That's the solar panel that's hidden outside the view. That's 5 feet 9 inches. Now, this shelter would be perfect in locations where we have plenty of right-of-way. So we also have a half shelter for areas that we would not have the luxury of additional space. To make sure that we do have the ADA compliance, the skinny column is being proposed, and at the bottom, it's roughly 1 foot and 10 inches, so that's a smaller version of the shelter. The design review committee also looked at potential trolley signs. While this is by no means the finished product, but the committee liked this particular design in deep blue. But the issue that we'd like to get comments on this evening is where would the trolley sign actually go on the bus shelter itself. The top left picture shows the trolley sign going right underneath the city seal, while the picture at the bottom right shows the sign is projecting outside the column. So we'd like to get your comments on that. Let me talk about the funding for a second. We currently have about $140,000 in the budget. That's minus the design fee that we're paying. In the upcoming fiscal year, we're requesting $500,000 in additional funds. $350,000 of that would be in AQMD funds. We also have an application request to OCTA requesting $330,000. So we could have a total of $970,000 and an estimated cost of $25,000 to $30,000 for each shelter. We should have adequate funds to rebuild all the shelters that currently exist, and potentially add a couple more at the new trolley stops. Also wanted to touch on existing benches in town. As the pictures tell the story again, they're beaten by the weather and they do need some attention. Staff is exploring the possibility of sandblasting and restaining them so that they would closely match the new seats and trash cans that would be in the as part of the new shelters. That concludes the presentation. Be happy to respond to any questions. I'd like to hear your comments on the proposed design as well as the where the trolley sign should go. And I'll back the presentation to where the trolley sign is shown.
Yeah, thank you very much.
For the
Director Abasadi.
conversation.
I appreciate you putting it back on the slide, because I was about to ask to not have to look at those pink benches for the rest of the meeting. Okay, thank you very much. As a member, along with Councilmember Menegar on the ad hoc committee, this is very exciting for us. We've spent a lot of time. The design review has been robust and impressive, and I was very, very pleased with it. The whole design here was to try to create something that that was much more befitting of the city that we've become, rather than what we might have been whenever the last bus shelters were put in. The design is a mid-century modern, essentially, design that involves a cantilever design with a single pole that comes out, and that you'll see that design reflecting and giving nod to the Tier 3 Crown Valley Park building that's been approved. The stonework on it relates not only to that building, but to our monument designs and other things. And the idea of putting the city seal on each one of these is something that has been done, I think, in most of our new design projects. The thing that's a little bit different about this one is that is a cut metal halo design. It's not a full color like we have on the street signs and other places. And the idea here was to put it there, to backlight it a little bit and make it stand out in a way. My thoughts on the trolley sign were that we wanted that to be something that when people were driving home and driving to work in the morning, they would see these things and think, you know, come Friday night or come Saturday during the day, we want to go ride the trolley. And so if I had a preference, I would say the one that I was leaning toward would be the one on the right that sort of sticks out a little bit. You see it as you're coming and going. It too could be internally lit so that it would be noticeable and catching people's attention and be something kind of clever that that would be, noticeable as they're driving to and from work. The top capstone of the columns is not exactly flat. It's a little bit arced so that the water doesn't pool on it and cause staining or anything like that. The idea behind the dark solar panel was to make it completely invisible regardless if you're looking down on it or not. So it should be rather innocuous, I would think. The recessed lighting is not, as envisioned, is not a round recessed light. It's a trim piece reset light, which is set up into the entire front rim of the bus shelter so that you get a full blanket of light, but it's recessed up in far enough that you also don't get night blindness if you're standing. It can be somewhat dangerous if you're standing inside an LED light and it's difficult to see people that are outside the light zone. So this would get the light out of the people's eyes, and so they can sit there and see what's around them intentionally, so that helps in people being self-aware. The big idea on the seats was to preclude people from sleeping on them. So that's why you don't see benches, you see individual seats. The rendering that's on the picture on the screen right now is a little bit of a misnomer. The one that was a few slides back it has rounded corners. It's very, you'll see it, there it is. It has rounded corners. It's much more smooth. It's comfortable to sit on and would be spaced far enough that it would be difficult to put something between those two seats so that people trying to improvise and sleep there would not have as great a success as they might otherwise have. So that's that. And you'll notice that there's a complete absence of advertising or signage of other things of any kind. We found that in past, that's been a waste of money because you put up a bus schedule on these things. The bus schedule changed, and now you have to change everything. There had been some discussion about putting Wi-Fi locators in each of the bus stops, which isn't technically all that difficult to do, but it also creates people who might want to hang out there a lot longer than they otherwise would to hang out there. So the idea was to try to do that. And the trash receptacles, although the one that you saw in the concept design was a single receptacle, we are told that they're looking for one that's includes both trash and recycling in the same unit, so that it's a design match to this. So what I haven't heard back from that on yet, but I understand that that's the intention. With respect to the benches, they're flatly unacceptable, so we have to do something about it, and we have to either replace them, fix them, or do something with it. But to save the city money, the idea was initially to see if we could either strip them and then powder coat them, or strip them and restain them, or try something, and then they would look somewhat different, and we would replace our city seals and repaint the city's name inside them. City of Laguna Hills has, I don't know if you've been driven through there, but they have the identical seat, which is in sort of a much nicer shade of light brown that has been more recently done. So something like that would probably work, probably end up saving some money. So we'll see what that looks like when it comes back. So this time, I ask any other questions by council members. Councilwoman Davies.
Thank you. First of all, great job on both your parts. It's beautiful. Is there a reason why, and I mean, I actually like the openness, because obviously in the past they usually had a wall back there for protection from the weather, basically. Is it just because we have pretty darn good weather and it's not needed?
Well, the discussion we had is that the wall, first of all, is one of the things that weathered the most.
Right.
So if you look at our current facilities, you either have to put up some type of steel that would look like this, and it would probably change the design aesthetic and not really provide that much shelter to begin with, or some type of plexiglass that is susceptible to vandalism and sun bleaching and all of that. Frankly, the overhang is big enough so that if the rain was coming in at some angle, you could stand away from it and get out of the rain, which is the idea, get out of the sun. And we have so much sunshine that I think that the idea was
I had a feeling. Also, how many benches do we have?
It depends on the size of the stop. My recollection is that we had 3 of the seats in each one, and there is a gap in there that's, you see the gap with a man standing with a walker. There's a gap in the seating arrangement that would allow for either a wheelchair or a walker or something like that, a stroller, to be parked there.
I was thinking that the ones that we want to try to change, the old ones. How many do we have of those?
Oh, I don't know. Do we have a count on those, Director Abazana?
I don't have the count. However, in your attachment, E of the staff report, we have mapped all the locations, but I don't have,
There's quite a few of them.
yeah,
They're
probably close to, I would say, 30 of them.
Is the cost to refurnish them in
Wh-
here? Is that separate?
No, it's not. It's
Okay.
separate, and we're getting more information on that.
I mean, we were looking to doing that with our, we had pool furniture like that, and it's expensive for them to actually have to go, and that's why, you know, it's something we might want to look at down the line is, again, it is some place where someone can take a nap on, and maybe it's something we need to look in just replacing down the line instead. And then I just think that, I think this is great, and real quick, I understand we've got the logo, then you'd have the trolley. For me, it's one of those aesthetic things where I look like it's too big for the top there, but I do think that it does stand out and you would notice it more, which I agree, but I do like the fact that if it's lit, that'd be great. So I can go either way on that. And then just one other thing, in regards to SB1, where funding, what we want to do is, because you're looking at 25 to 30,000 per. Right now, obviously, ridership is down when it comes to transit, and if SB1 is overturned, that will be funding, because what that does fund is buses, and ridership is down. It might be where they may have to actually take certain routes off, and so we may not need a bus station there and spend 25 to 30,000. So I would look into that to make sure if that happens, is this going to even be an existing? Because most likely down in our area, we've got a whole different style of transit we're looking at. We're starting to look at, you know, from Ubers to vans to, we've got a pilot program that's going to be starting that you'll know about, which is actually really great. So it's a lot of money to put in. Also, and it's like we're no longer using that route. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I do understand that these are, they're in units, so this is a unit that would be placed on site. So to the extent that we have bus routes that change, we could pick up the unit and put it in a new location. So it doesn't have to be dismantled or destroyed to be moved, because it's coming in as a unit. So I haven't talked to the consultants about what they look like when they get picked back up, but they are coming in as one unit. So. Councilwoman Lindholm.
I think they're a huge improvement. They're very classy. They're keeping in line with the city, and I love the stacked stone, and a lot of thought went into this. A couple of questions for you. Would the Laguna Niguel print be illuminated? You've got, is that a cutout, or is that just carved in? Is that brass? What is that?
It's letters imposed on top of steel, or what's.
So at night, it's not going to.
It would not be lit up at night. So.
Okay. Question to look at. I know when we were designing like bank teller windows and ATMs, you get a certain amount of lumens, so that it's a safe place, and there's a very specific amount to keep it bright. I'm hearing you say you want to keep it low, but I don't know. If you want to have that certain amount so that it's a safe and secure, when the police come by, they can see everybody is illuminated. So that's a question.
Yeah, and I appreciate the question, because if I said that, I misspoke. What I meant to say is that the LED lights will be very bright. What you don't want is, while you're standing in the shelter, to have those lights in your eyes. So we've recessed the LED light up into a fascia on the front of the design, so that if it still puts out the same amount of light, but as you're standing in there, it's not night blinding the people that are in it. So if somebody was, as an example, coming at them, or they wanted to know if somebody was walking towards them, they could see outside the LED field and see them coming at them. Otherwise, they might not, because the light would be in their eyes and it'd be too bright. But it is no less bright as a result of that effort.
Okay. No, that makes a great deal of sense. I just want to make sure that they feel safe and secure if they're an evening rider or a nurse coming home late at night and they need that. So I'm okay with everything there. Wherever you want to put the trolley sign, it's a cool trolley sign. I would love to get rid of all the old benches. I think it's way past time.
Yeah.
They've been.
Do you know how long they've been there? Because I didn't.
They're like original. And they were hazardous. They're concrete. They weigh a lot. Replacing as many as you can at a time would be my preference to sandblasting them. I would love to see them all gone. and not spend another dime on them.
Thank you. I think the committee's request back was, tell us how much it would cost, and we will tell you what we're interested in, and we can bring that back to council. So. Councilman Miniker?
A few final comments. I'm very pleased after, I guess, we started this process almost 3.5 years ago with regard to the signage. It's about time to see a rejuvenation, revitalization, and beautification of the city, and this is one of those elements with the, the existing 36 ugly bus shelters that we have. Anytime you're driving around, you see these ugly canopies that it doesn't belong to our city's standards. So with that said, I'm very pleased with the outcome of the final design, and to go back with regard to which concept or which option I prefer the one that would be hanging, so people can clearly identify that, oh, there's a trolley stop. Otherwise, it's going to be treated as another sign underneath the street sign. So with that, I'm very happy with this.
Great, thank you very much. Hearing no other comments, is there a motion to approve?
I make the motion
I'm happy
to approve.
I'm happy to second it. So Councilmember Menegar moved, Mayor Pro Tem seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. And before we move on, thank you very much to staff, everybody who was involved in that process. It was fun, and you guys did a great job. And from meeting to meeting, these things just transformed into something really nice. So I greatly appreciate it. So thanks to everyone. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt again tonight.
No problem.
I just want to make sure that you covered everything. So you approved the bus shelter design. Did you affirm what the location of the trolley sign?
I presumed in the motion that I had all in favor of it being on the outside.
On the
Yeah,
okay.
not on the post, but on the outside.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, that includes all of our agenda items. There are no ad hoc committee reports this evening, so we'll move right on to council reports. As I look to my right, Councilwoman Lindholm.
Thank you. I'd be brief on one, and then one informative to the remainder to our city council. I did go to the 4-hour budget meeting that we had, and I'm just stating that. But to share with you, we had today with the city manager a meeting with the ad hoc homeless task force, and it was very well attended, and I think it produced a lot of great information. We were very, very happy with the results. We had those from FAM, we had South County Outreach, we had from St. Timothy's, we had from Mission Lutheran, we have from the Presbyterian Church. So we had this whole group. I know you were busy, Police Chief, very, very busy. Thank you so much. But a lot of great information came about that what we are doing, city manager and our interim city manager, Debbie Bell, will be giving you kind of a synopsis of what's out there in terms of trying to have people be able to get back on their feet, to keep families together. There was just a whole lot of fantastic information, and I wanted the people to know that, yes, we were not in favor of a tent city, because there weren't going to be any services. There wasn't going to be any outcome. There wasn't going to be any evaluation. This incorporated all of that. It was a very exciting meeting. We are looking forward to having a second meeting June 12th, and keeping you updated on that. It was a very, very useful meeting. And City Manager, would you like to make any additional comments?
Just to remind everyone that it's a task force to help me make a strategy to address homeless within the city, to come up with sustainable policies. And I do agree with Councilmember Lindholm. It was a very robust dialogue. And even right there in the room at the table, there were opportunities immediately seized upon between the faith-based groups and the nonprofit groups. So we expect to have between 6 and 8 more meetings, and then hopefully I will glean enough information to present the strategy for you.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to share that with you and let people know that we are focusing on trying to take care of our homeless and give them the best outcomes we can. And it was a very, very good, productive meeting. Thank you.
Great. Councilwoman Davies?
Just one. First of all, I want to thank Police Services. This is the second time we're putting on, but this coming Thursday as well as next Thursday, we have a safety class for women. And 2016, we put this on with the Get Safe program, and this is for ages 13 to 21, and it covers safe dating, campus safety, safe methods, sexual harassment, self-defense techniques. And I can tell you when we did the first one, I watched a group of 60 girls come in there, very quiet. And by the end of this program, it was amazing. Their voices were heard. It's teaching them that it's okay, especially as females, to be loud and, you know, and to, you know, fight back if they need to. It's giving them common sense because we live in a beautiful city, but, you know, a lot of them are going out to colleges and things like that, and they're not really looking in from all sides. So this is on Thursday from 6 to 7:30. You can call Police Services and at 949-362-4346. Also, it'll be May 24th. We can take up to 80. I think we're at like 65 right now, and then we're almost at 80 next Thursday. But again, the parents were able to sit in and watch, and I had more parents saying, I want to do this. So to me, if we can, you know, set something in one of these girls' minds and she gets into a situation, it'll come back and we can keep them safe. And we will be also schools, be opening a school for next year. We're going to be doing a class on bullying, and it's going to be for boys in middle school. So great program, and again, anyone, we still have openings. Highly recommend. If you've got a daughter, you've got you know someone, please bring them into this. It's going to be well worth it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councilwoman Davies. Councilmember Menegar.
All right. On Thursday and Friday, May 3rd and 4th, I represented the cities of Aliso Viejo, Dana Point, Laguna Beach, San Clemente, San Juan Capistrano, and obviously our great city as a part of the District 12 of Southern California Association of Governments at 2018 General Assembly of SCAG. And on behalf of the cities that I represent, I echoed our position with regard to Sanctuary City. On Tuesday, May the 8th, I attended, along with Mayor Pro Tem John Mark Jennings, not to steal your item from you, the Junior Civics Workshops graduation night at the City Hall. It was a great night to see all the future young leaders of our great city. On Wednesday, May the 9th, I participated in the TCA Joint Operations and Finance Committee as well as Joint Executive Ad Hoc Committee. On Thursday, May the 10th, I chaired the joint boards meeting of the TCA comprised of 22 cities and Orange County Board of Supervisors in Irvine. On Saturday, May 12th, I attended the Spirits League competition for special needs kids at Marina Hills Park. It was a great event. Over 150, I was told, participated in the competition from all over Southern California. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember Menegar. I wanted to use my few moments tonight to just say a couple of thank yous. One was to our Chief of Police Services and all of your staff today. You had a rough day. I also would be thanking Chief Adams if he were here with the Orange County Fire Authority. But what happened in Aliso Viejo today was very scary, and we had, I'm sure it looked like more than 50 units out there of some variety between police and fire authority. And it was not easy. And while our hearts are with the people who were injured today, and I understand at least one and perhaps even two lost their lives as a result of that, the impacts that those have also, they weigh heavily on the hearts of our first responders too. And for the people that dealt with that and for the people that rolled up on that and dealt with these people, our hearts stay with you as well. We also have a tremendous amount of gratitude. I know that the chief was very involved today with a unification process where the students from the preschool, there's a whole system that they have in place where they come together and meet their families, and they know where to do that. And it was announced, it was at the Target parking lot, and the chief was there, and he was helping and guiding. And my goodness, as a father, I can only imagine how much of a benefit that means to those children to know that some men and women in green were watching out for them, that were protecting them, and putting back together with their families. So I was very, very touched by that today. I was very, very touched by the outpouring from the community online and other things about saying what they thought about that. And I just want to say, Chief, thank you very much. And to Chief Adams, when he's here, I say thank you to you as well. So with that, that's all of my comments. And since you're first on the list, I'll go around the room and go to Chief McDaniel.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I was out there for several hours today and had the opportunity to actually talk to some of the victims' family and friends, and so I would just offer my prayers and thoughts to them. It's a very hard time, but from the Orange County Sheriff's Department and Laguna Niguel Police Services, our thoughts and prayers are with them tonight. On the personal safety class for women, we do have just a few openings for this Thursday, which is in 2 nights. They can call police services to make a reservation. I think we have 5 to 10 openings for this Thursday and approximately 20 for the following Thursday, the 24th. So please call. It is a great class and a great opportunity for learning some techniques to defend themselves. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Chief. Director Erlandson, nothing tonight. City Attorney Dixon.
No, I think I'll pass. Nothing tonight.
All right. Thank you very much. Director Roseberry. Manager Mazbudi. Great, thank you. Anything further, Mr. Orunda? City Clerk Gomez. Great, thank you. Director Giglio, Parks and Rec.
Thank you. You heard from Committee Member Probolski earlier about the Music and Arts Festival on Friday, May 18th, 6:30 to 9:30 at Cram Valley Park. There's more information about that at lnteens.org. The Spray Ground is going to open for the summer on Memorial Day weekend, May 26th. So operating hours and updates will be posted on the city website. And the American Legion Post 281 will host a free Memorial Day event at Sea Country Center on Monday, May 28th at noon, and doors will open at 11 a.m. And I hear their guest speaker is going to be, he was in the Gulf War, and they always have very good speakers at that event. It's very moving. Thank you.
Thank you. Interim Assistant City Manager Bell.
Thank you. I just wanted to share with the council that on May 10th, the House of Representatives passed H.R. 3053, and it is a piece of legislation that, if adopted by the Senate, would reopen Yucca Mountain as a nuclear waste repository in New Mexico. And it would also provide temporary nuclear waste repositories almost immediately, so that there is a chance, if this all went as well as could be, that some of the nuclear waste that's at San Onofre could be moved. So that is something that's very current and in process, and I'll keep you updated as it moves along. And then lastly, tonight is our Public Works Director last night. We're not going to let him go easily. He will definitely be working up till 5 on his last day. But he has done a lot of good in the city, and I will miss him and his ability to get the work done and to get it done quickly and quietly and without a lot of fuss. So that's all I had for tonight.
And if you listen very closely, you can hear a swan singing a song. Director Abazai.
Well, on that note, since this is my last official city council meeting, next time you'll see me in these chambers, I'll be wearing my resident hat. So I'm not going away too far.
Carrying a sign, no doubt.
But I would like to thank the city council for your leadership and support of all of Public Works projects and programs. I'd like to give my heartfelt thanks to my colleagues on the executive team for their support and help with all of our projects. And finally, special kudos to the Public Works team. I won't get into details. At the budget workshop, we talked about the multitude of projects that the Public Works team delivered in the last year and throughout the years. And of course, they have a very lofty program for the upcoming year. So I salute them for the hard work and dedication, and for making the city look so great. Thanks, everyone.
Well, on behalf of the city, and I'm sure I speak for the council, we admire and appreciate and thank you for your public service. It means a lot that people get into public service, and you've certainly done yeoman's work for the city of Laguna Niguel, and you have our appreciation. Thank you, sir. And finally, City Manager Ridge.
Just a quick update on homeless. I wanted to make sure that you all were aware that we are continuing meetings. The city managers in South Orange County continue to have meetings and discussions on addressing homelessness. And then the undersheriff, Don Barnes, hosted a meeting on May 7th with all of the local city managers as well, where he talked about discussing collaborative efforts that we could do, because in South County, unlike North County, we're serviced by the Orange County Sheriff's Department. So there is a lot of opportunity for the cities to work together. And if there's a best practice going on at one of our neighbors' jurisdictions, it's something that we can duplicate within our jurisdiction. And then, of course, the mayors, the Southern Orange County Association of Mayors, continue to have meetings on it. And the mayor and myself attended one just on May 10th with the focus on homelessness again. And I have to say, you know, Director Abazadi, I think I said it correctly. My only opportunity to get that correct. It certainly has been a pleasure getting to know you, and it's been an honor working with you, and I wish you the best of luck in retirement.
Great. Thank you very much for all those comments, and thank you for a great meeting, and thank you to Mayor and her absence allowing me to take the seat. So this concludes our regular city council meeting. We are now adjourned at 9:10 p.m. Thank you.